The town of Izayama rested quietly between thick green hills, where people still believed in spirits and old gods. Every market day, voices rose and fell like wind over the red earth, carrying gossip from one stall to another, and almost every whisper carried one name: Aneka. She was 17, tall, with eyes that caught light like water. Her skin glowed as if it had swallowed sunlight. Even the old men in the square often stopped mid-sentence when she passed, but her beauty was both a blessing and a wound. Women in the village said she used charms to look that way. Some claimed her mother had bathed her in river spirit's water as a baby. The girls around her age mocked her, gently at first, then cruelly. They called her Onye Ojoma, the beautiful witch. They said any man who loved her would meet bad luck. Because of that, no friend stayed long and no woman wanted her near their sons. Her mother, Mama Ebeli, told her to ignore them, but even she sometimes looked at Aneka with quiet fear, as though unsure what blood truly ran in her daughter's veins. Aneka often sat by the stream behind her house, watching her reflection ripple in the water. She wished she could wash away her beauty like dirt, but every time she touched the cool surface, it only mirrored her face brighter. Deep inside, she felt something heavy, a strange pull she couldn't explain, as if the water itself knew her story before she did. In the distance, drums beat softly from the village square, and she wondered if her life would ever be ordinary again. That night, the moon hung full and pale over Izayama, spreading its silver light across the thatched roofs. Aneka couldn't sleep. The laughter from the village still echoed in her mind, the way they pointed at her when she passed the market earlier that day. She got up quietly and stepped outside, the night air cool against her skin. She walked behind the hut to the stream again, her safe place. But this time, something strange caught her eye. Her reflection shimmered, and on her left shoulder, a faint, glowing mark appeared. It was shaped like a spiral, faint but alive, pulsing softly under the moonlight. She rubbed it, thinking it was dirt, but it didn't fade. Fear gripped her. She rushed inside and woke her mother. Mama Ebeli's eyes widened when she saw it. She didn't speak at first. Then she whispered, her voice shaking, "So it has come again." She told Aneka that every woman in their bloodline carried that mark, a gift and a curse from generations ago. Long ago, a goddess had blessed their ancestor with beauty beyond measure, but when that beauty caused destruction among men, the goddess cursed her descendants to live admired, but unloved. Neka felt her world crumble. Everything suddenly made sense. The gossip, the loneliness, the strange look in her mother's eyes. She begged her mother to tell her how to break the curse, but Mama Ebele said no one ever had. Many had tried. All failed. Some even disappeared. Still, as the wind rustled the palm leaves outside, Neka swore she wouldn't accept such a fate. Somewhere, somehow, there had to be a way to rewrite her story. The next morning, the sun poured gently through the cracks of their hut. Neka sat in silence, staring at the mark on her shoulder. It had faded slightly, but still glowed faintly beneath her brown skin, like a secret the world was not meant to see. The words of her mother echoed in her mind, the curse, the goddess, the bloodline. She wondered how one could be born with something so beautiful, yet carry so much pain. When she stepped outside, the villagers' eyes followed her again, their whispers like dry leaves in Harmattan wind. At the market square, she met someone new, a young herbalist named Chibuike. He was tall, quiet, and had the calm eyes of someone who had seen many mysteries. He had just arrived in Izayama to sell his herbs and roots. When Aneka greeted him, he looked at her strangely, not with lust or mockery, but with curiosity. He said softly, "I've seen that mark before." Her heart skipped. He told her that his late mentor once spoke of a family of women touched by divine beauty and cursed by jealousy. He claimed there was a ritual that might lift the curse, one that required great courage and pure love. Nanika didn't fully believe him, but something in his voice felt true. That night, she thought of him as she lay awake, his calm eyes, his steady tone. Could this stranger really know the way to her freedom? Or was he just another person drawn by the mystery of her face? As crickets sang outside, she felt both fear and a spark of hope for the first time in her life. Days passed and Nanika found herself drawn to Chibuike's small hut at the edge of Eziyama. He lived close to the forest, where the air smelled of herbs and rain. His shelves were lined with clay pots filled with strange roots and powders. The villagers feared him, calling him the boy who talks to spirits. But Nanika saw something gentle in his silence. One evening she visited him again, holding her wrapper tightly as the wind rustled through the trees. Chibuike sat grinding leaves in a small mortar. Without looking up, he said quietly, "The curse you carry was born in this forest." He told her that long ago their ancestor had angered the goddess of beauty, Awele. The goddess had loved a mortal man who instead chose Nanika's ancestor. Out of jealousy, Awele cursed the woman's bloodline so that their beauty would bring only sorrow. Chibuike said there was a way, a forbidden ritual that could only be performed under the full moon at the heart of the forest, where Awele's shrine still stood. It required blood, truth, and the presence of someone who loved her selflessly. Neka's heart raced. No one had ever loved her, not truly. People only stared at her face, never her soul. She looked at Chibuike and wondered if he was the one the gods had sent. But the thought frightened her. Could she trust him? Could she risk her life to end what generations had endured? As night fell, she stepped out of his hut and looked toward the dark forest. The trees swayed slowly, whispering her name as if they already knew her choice. The forest of Eziyama was alive that night. The moon hung large and red, its light spilling through the trees like fire on silver leaves. Neka followed Chibuike along a narrow path, her bare feet sinking into the damp soil. Every sound, the rustle of branches, the call of owls, made her heart beat faster. She had told her mother she was going to fetch water, but she knew she might not return. Chibuike carried a small gourd filled with sacred herbs and a clay pot of river water. When they reached the heart of the forest, they saw the old shrine, broken, covered in moss, yet glowing faintly in the moonlight. Chibuike turned to her and said softly, "Once we start, there's no turning back. You must tell the goddess the truth about your heart. Lies will destroy you." Neka nodded. He drew symbols on the ground with white chalk and mixed the herbs into the water. As she knelt, the air thickened. The forest grew silent. Even the wind stopped moving. Then, the mark on her shoulder began to burn. A voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere, soft, angry, and sorrowful. It was Awele, the goddess herself. She asked, "Why should I lift what your bloodline deserves?" Tears filled Neka's eyes. She spoke of her loneliness, her shame, her longing to be loved not for her face, but for her soul. The ground trembled as if the forest was listening. Chibuike stepped forward and cut his palm, letting his blood fall beside her. "If love is the price, then take mine," he whispered. The wind roared, and the shrine flared with light. Neka fell to the ground, her body shaking as the mark on her shoulder burned brighter than ever before. When Neka opened her eyes, the forest was glowing like dawn. Her head throbbed, and her skin felt cold against the earth. The mark on her shoulder had stopped burning, but it shimmered faintly like a dying ember. Chibuike knelt beside her, his palm still bleeding. He looked pale but calm. Above them, a figure slowly formed from the mist, tall, radiant, and sorrowful. The goddess Awele had appeared. Her eyes shone like stars, and her voice was soft yet filled with power. "For generations, your bloodline has carried my anger, but tonight, one has dared to speak truth, and one has dared to love without fear." Neka trembled as she listened. The goddess stepped closer and touched Neka's face with fingers of light. Your beauty is not your curse, your pride was. She turned to Chibuike and said, "Your sacrifice has moved the heavens, but love comes with a price." Before Neka could speak, the goddess waved her hand and a bright wind surrounded Chibuike. His body stiffened, his eyes closing as the light lifted him gently into the air. When it faded, he was gone, leaving only the echo of his voice calling her name. Neka screamed his name into the silence, but the forest only sighed. The image of Awele began to fade, her words lingering in the air. The curse is broken, but every freedom demands something precious. Neka fell to her knees, tears flowing down her face. The mark on her shoulder disappeared completely, leaving only smooth skin. The moonlight now felt warm, not heavy. Yet in her heart, emptiness spread, the taste of freedom mixed with loss. She realized she had been saved by the only person who ever saw her beyond her beauty. Morning broke softly over Eziyama. The forest mist drifted away as birds began to sing. Neka walked out slowly, her wrapper torn, her eyes swollen from tears. The mark was gone, but her heart felt hollow. When she reached the village, people stared again, not because of her beauty, this time because something about her had changed. Her glow was calmer, her gaze steady. The air around her no longer carried mystery or fear. Mama Ebele ran to her and held her tightly, crying as she saw her daughter alive and whole. Neka said only one thing, her voice low. "The curse is gone, Mama, but love took it away." Days turned to weeks. The gossip faded into stories, and the stories became legends. The villagers said the goddess of beauty had forgiven Eziyama because of one brave girl and one pure heart. Neka no longer hid by the stream. She helped her mother in the market, smiled at children, and lived quietly. But sometimes, at night, she would walk to the forest's edge and whisper to the wind, hoping Chibuike could still hear her. When the moon was full, a faint glow often appeared between the trees, gentle, warm, like a soul watching over her. Years later, mothers in Eziyama told their daughters about Neka, the girl too beautiful to be loved, who found love that broke a curse. Her story taught them that beauty could shine brighter when mixed with kindness and courage. And though she lived the rest of her life in peace, whenever the night grew still, she could still feel his presence, a whisper in the breeze that said, "You were always more than your face."